Hello, everybody. It's Nicholas Fogelson from Northwest Endometriosis and Pelvic Surgery. Um, we're in a coronavirus world. My practice is shut down for the next 2 weeks. We're no longer seeing patients in the office, and I did a surgery on Monday, and that's probably the last surgery we're going to do through the end of the month. Um, the hospital has followed national guidelines and said that we are not able to do elective surgeries. Um, that is for several reasons. One is that obviously there's a risk of contracting coronavirus at the hospital, but I think the bigger issue is that there's expected to be a surge of cases over the next couple of weeks, and they basically want to preserve hospital resources, including gowns, gloves, masks, and potentially even the ventilators that are in the operating rooms, and they want to preserve those for coronavirus response. So for the people that had their surgeries rescheduled, it's very unfortunate. I know that people wait months in order to have their surgeries, and it's very disappointing to not be able to do that. And people have made arrangements with work, and unfortunately, I'm very sorry it's happening. But I mean, that's just the reality. It's totally outside of our control, of course, and we just have to work through. But the good thing is we do commit to, once things are kind of up and running again, we'll work extra hard and try to, do even more than we normally do so that we can kind of catch up and get people taken care of to the best of our ability. So I think in the long run, things will get taken care of. So that it's an unfortunate, but the reality of the practice right now, and I think around the country, probably most endometriosis surgeons or any other surgeons are really not doing surgery unless it's clearly medically necessary on an urgent basis. The second thing is I just wanted to talk a little bit about coronavirus. And I'm not an epidemiologist. I don't play one on television. I'm a gynecologist and an endometriosis surgeon. To me, the only people that are truly reliable in this are the epidemiologists that are working on this. I think there's a tremendous amount of information that kind of goes out of the internet from people who are kind of armchair experts. And people are of varying expertise, but the people that are probably the most reliable are the people at the CDC and Dr. Fauci, who is the administration's expert, who I think is quite reliable. In fact, he was appointed, I think, under Bush, and he worked for Bush and Obama and now for Trump. He's really not a partisan. He is a very smart guy. I think the outbreak is incredibly real. I don't think it's being overblown. I think the American system is at risk. I don't think it's at risk in the long run. I think America will recover. I think the economy is incredibly strong over the long run. But I think in the short run, we're going to have issues over weeks to months. And I think that's totally real. And I think it's kind of irresponsible when people are expressing skepticism online and getting people to say, no, don't. You should go out and do your business. You shouldn't stay home. You shouldn't be following the national recommendations, because I think those recommendations are actually very important. That's why we closed our practice. The second thing is, I think one thing that's absolutely clear is that the number of cases of coronavirus is massively, massively underreported. I suspect there's probably 100 people that have coronavirus for every one person that they say has coronavirus. Maybe it's more than that. And here's why I say this. You can't get tested for coronavirus right now. It's almost impossible to get tested. So there's a tremendous number of people that are calling their doctors saying they have fevers and they feel sick. And their doctors are telling them to stay home. No one's testing them for coronavirus. I had a patient who I just talked to, and she's febrile and she feels sick, and her boyfriend who she lives with is also sick. And her physician reported to her, says, oh yeah, people are calling us from all over the place, but there's no testing and you just stay home. So really the only reported cases are people that are sick enough to go to the hospital and get one of the few limited tests that there are. Right now the state of Oregon only has capacity to test 80 people per day, which isn't really very many. And so, if they say we have several thousand cases in the U.S., we have tens of thousands of cases in the U.S. And that's why when people are saying, oh my gosh, there's really very few cases right now, why are we being so worried about it? You have to realize there's way more cases than what's being reported. we had testing for H1N1. Talking about H1N1, and people say that it was so much more common. We had testing for H1N1 that was widely available. Like by the time H1N1 got to the United States, you could order an H1N1 test at any hospital. It was no big deal. Whereas right now, you still can't order a coronavirus test. LabCorp and Quest, which are probably the two major commercial labs in the country, are just now coming online to where you could order a test through an office, but it's still not quite available. So you really can't compare the numbers of coronavirus to the numbers of previous epidemics like SARS and so forth, because testing for those things was actually available by the time there were a lot of cases in the U.S. Second, the virus is quite virulent, meaning that if you get it, you can get quite ill. Early on in all of this, there was sort of the mythology that the only people that were getting sick and dying are old people, 70, 80-year-olds in nursing homes. There's no question that if you're old and you're relatively infirm and have a relatively weak immune system because of age, you're more likely to have a really negative outcome. That being said, I personally believe, and again, this is just my experience as a physician and experience with viruses, that probably one of the strongest predictors of how sick you get is how much your exposure is. There is a difference between getting a very, very light exposure to a virus and getting a very, very heavy exposure to a virus. This is definitely true in other things like hepatitis C and HIV. If you get really, really mild exposures to those diseases, often you don't get enough viral load to actually start replicating the disease, and eventually your body just fights it off and you don't have it anymore. And people can get very small exposures to HIV and hepatitis and not get those diseases. And some diseases are more infectious than others. For example, hepatitis B, you need very, very few copies of it to get infected with hepatitis B. Whereas hepatitis C, actually, you need more exposure to get infected. And so, to some extent, these people that are getting extremely sick in nursing homes who are old and they're dying, this is theoretical, so I don't want you to take this home and say, oh, Dr. Fogelson said this, so it must be true. I mean, this is just my own thought process. That these people are doing poorly not just because they are old, but also because they're probably getting very heavy exposures because they're stuck in closed environments with other infected people and they're getting continuously exposed. I think that may be the case. And so what we've seen is that some young people have done very, very poorly with coronavirus, even though they're not in this high-risk group. There were lots and lots of physicians in China who died from coronavirus, and presumably they're relatively young, vigorous people. However, they are probably people that were very significantly exposed because they're working in the healthcare environment and getting continuously exposed to it over time. You have to think about it, that if you get a really, really small exposure to a virus, you don't get sick, you actually become immune to it. That's called a vaccine. That's what vaccines are. Now, we usually attenuate our vaccines if they're live vaccines, so we try to take out some element of the virus that really makes it really virulent, so you're able to create an immune response to the virus without it actually making you sick. And then there are actually toxoid vaccines that literally are just a chunk of the virus that has no potential to make you sick. But nonetheless, very, very small exposures to infectious diseases can actually just immunize you, and that's how vaccines work. In fact, when you go back to smallpox times, in early smallpox times, they actually immunized people by giving them very, very small exposures to smallpox. And because it was very, very small exposure, people would get sick, but they would not get full-blown smallpox, and then they would be immune to smallpox. And that you go back hundreds of years. You even saw that occur in the show John Adams. If you ever watched the HBO show John Adams, Abigail Adams immunized their two kids during a smallpox outbreak by taking a tiny bit of mucus from a smallpox sick person and immunizing her daughters with it, or her children with it. And then one of them got mildly ill and became immune, and the other one actually got full-blown smallpox. That was at least in the show. So again, I do think the amount that one is exposed to the disease is going to be a big predictor of how sick you get, not just if you're old or not. So that being said, I think that staying home makes all the sense in the world. I don't think being around. I was going to go to Hawaii next week for a vacation with my family. We're almost certainly not going. For a while, it seemed like we were going to go. But now it seems like, well, we're just going to go and be quarantined in a hospital. I mean, excuse me, be quarantined in a hotel. And it'll be really nice, but uh, I'm not sure that it's a nice vacation to just go and sit in a nice hotel in Hawaii and still not be going out and enjoying ourselves. So we're probably going to stay here. Um, that's about all I have to say. I would just tell everybody, be safe, wash your hands, try not to be around too many people. I think this is the real deal. And, be safe, be healthy, and we'll look forward to taking care of as many people as we can for endometriosis once things get running again. Thanks very much.